What if I told you that one of the most famous celebrity homes in America is quietly changing hands behind the scenes?
Prince Harry, now better really get used to this life that he's created for himself.
The reports here in America are that they are having major financial problems. I actually read a report last week that they may be very quietly shopping their $14 million Montecito mansion, that it may be something of a pocket listing.
A man who was once royalty was spotted at a California party, visibly emotional, pouring his heart out to people he barely knew. According to claims that have circulated for years, he was talking about wanting a completely different life, desperate for a way out of California, out of the path he had locked himself into. And now, the mansion that was supposed to represent freedom and a fresh start may already be gone. If that's true, it raises serious questions about what has really been going on behind closed doors. But to understand why this matters, we need to go back to where it all started. This story isn't really about a house, it's about a promise. When Harry and Meghan left royal life and boarded what many people nicknamed the Freedom Flight, they made it clear they were done with the old world and building something entirely new on their own terms.
Meghan is defying the King and William by using her title and royal logo, saying if the Duchess of York could do it, so can she, and there's not a thing they can do about it.
So I doubt whether he would have had time to look at it, because prior to his death in August 77, he was busy planning another tour.
They felt trapped, they wanted privacy, they wanted control, and for a moment it actually looked like it was working. The California mansion, the Netflix deal, the Spotify deal, the glossy magazine covers, the foundation, the business ventures, all of it was carefully designed to prove they didn't need royal backing to thrive. But critics have been pointing out the same thing for years. The polished public image never seemed to line up with the questions being whispered behind the scenes. The lifestyle looked insanely expensive. The projects kept drawing scrutiny, and plenty of observers started wondering whether things were really as solid as they appeared. Now, 6 years in, more experts and commentators are asking those very same questions, because what's coming out of Montecito today sounds nothing like the story people were expecting. The so-called Freedom Flight carried them thousands of miles away from royal life, but some believe the landing hasn't delivered everything that was promised. Before getting into what's happening with the mansion right now, and the latest reports have definitely set off a wave of conversation, there's one thing that almost nobody stops to think about. Most people have never actually seen inside Harry and Meghan's real home. Let that sink in.
Their royal marriage may be on the verge of total collapse, and the allegations coming out are absolutely explosive. Furious and visibly frustrated, Prince Harry allegedly revealed that he feels he was completely catfished by the woman he married.
Over the years, audiences have sat through documentaries, sit-down interviews, promo videos, and carefully staged behind-the-scenes moments, yet reportedly, none of those appearances were filmed inside the property where they actually live. Their Montecito estate, often called the Chateau of Riven Rock, sits on around 7.5 acres and comes loaded with 9 bedrooms, 16 bathrooms, a movie theater, spa facilities, a wine cellar, and a tennis court. The property was purchased in 2020 for $14.5 million. Meghan has said she wanted to keep their home private, protecting what she called their safe haven. That's exactly why, when Harry and Meghan filmed their headline-making Netflix documentary, they reportedly used a completely different property on Lilac Drive, not their actual home. And when Meghan later launched her lifestyle and cooking series, viewers still weren't seeing the real residence. Another location, another carefully chosen backdrop, another curated illusion. So the version of Montecito life that audiences have been watching for years, it may not even be the home they live in. The real property has stayed almost completely hidden from public view, and nobody seems to be talking about that.
The sprawling estate became the backdrop for everything. The backdrop for their Netflix deal, their Spotify, their interviews, the magazine features, all of their business launches, their family photos. This mansion became more than a house. It became a symbol that they had successfully left the royal family behind a created new life in America.
Now ask yourself something. If someone builds their entire public image around lifestyle, home life, and carefully curated behind-the-scenes moments, why go to such extreme lengths to keep the actual family home completely hidden from view? That question has been picking up serious steam lately, and it gets even more interesting when you look back at how Harry and Meghan first landed in North America. Contrary to what many people remember, they didn't walk straight into a luxury Montecito mansion. Instead, they reportedly spent time living at Tyler Perry's heavily secured property while figuring out their next move. Perry, one of Hollywood's most powerful and influential figures, opened his doors to them during a major life transition, a gesture that turned a lot of heads at the time. Since then, some commentators and longtime followers of this story have raised questions about whether Perry's support went beyond simply offering a roof over their heads. Speculation has circulated about whether additional assistance may have helped the couple get established in California. To be clear, these remain unconfirmed claims. Perry has not publicly addressed them, and Harry and Meghan haven't spoken to them directly either. Still, one question keeps coming back.
There is no parallel between a married member of the royal family, which is what Meghan is, and a divorced member of the royal family.
But 6 years later, many of the plans that were supposed to be defined by this home, this new life, everything had changed dramatically. So we know Spotify is gone. Netflix has become increasingly really uncertain. Like, what is this? They're trying not to hurt their feelings, but still be available for big breaking divorce news. Several business ventures have struggled to gain traction for them. Let's just be honest. And Harry himself appears to be spending more and more time away from his home in Montecito, pursuing separate projects. That's the reality.
When the Montecito property was purchased in 2020 for $14.5 million, the couple had only just stepped away from royal duties. Their major media deals were still being shaped, and most of the revenue streams people associate with them today hadn't fully kicked in yet. Discussions about how that purchase was financed have never really gone away, and as fresh reports about their business ventures keep hitting headlines, those questions are getting louder. Now, let's talk money, because this is where things get really interesting. Keeping a massive Montecito estate running is not cheap, not even close. Reports cited by Page 6 claimed the annual cost of maintaining their lifestyle could climb into the millions every single year. And this isn't about building wealth or growing investments, it's about day-to-day running costs. Security teams, household staff, landscaping crews, property taxes, general upkeep, the numbers being thrown around are enough to make your head spin. Then there's the income side of the equation, and that's where the real drama lives. Several projects that once looked like rock-solid long-term wins have hit serious turbulence. The Spotify partnership collapsed, and the fallout was loud. A Spotify executive publicly called the couple grifters, a label that exploded across headlines and social media almost instantly. The Netflix relationship has also come under intense scrutiny.
She is such a wonderful ambassador to the royal family, and it is incredibly touching to see her be so empathetic and compassionate towards people that have suffered or are suffering from something that unfortunately she's had to experience herself. You're talking about sitting at her wedding. Did you ever think she'd be such an exquisite princess?
The question then becomes, why now? So what could actually be causing this move? What is actually leading this theory of a move? Well, let's assume for a moment that the rumors are true. What would motivate a move? Well, we know that there are several possibilities. First, privacy. Ironically, the couple who moved to Montecito for privacy have spent years battling media attention in California.
While the deal is still technically alive, multiple reports suggest it no longer looks anything like the blockbuster arrangement that first made global news. On top of that, public appearances and speaking engagements have become their own soap opera, with commentators tracking attendance numbers, ticket sales, and audience interest like a scoreboard. Every new development seems to light another fuse. And then, royal commentator Maureen Callahan dropped a statement just days ago that stopped people mid-scroll. She said the Sussexes are having a lot of trouble monetizing what they used to monetize, and argued that much of the public fascination surrounding them was always tied to their connection to royal life. Simple words, but they landed like a wrecking ball. According to Callahan, that source of attention simply isn't pulling the same weight it once did, and whether you agree with that or not, it points to a challenge that plenty of public figures eventually run into. What happens when the very thing that made you famous starts losing its grip on people? That's the question hanging over this entire story right now. And while everyone's focused on the money, something else has been unfolding quietly in the background. Inside Archwell, reports suggest there has been a noticeable wave of staff departures, including several senior figures who played key roles within the organization.
But what we have to see here is that Harry and Meghan increasingly pursuing independent projects, separate appearances. Meghan most recently spoke out how she just wants to separate herself from Harry and the royal drama, showing she's more independent. She's not really relying on him anymore, because she's off at the races doing her own thing. But a source has suggested that something very interesting may be happening behind the scenes. And if true, it could answer a lot of questions about the Sussexes' future.
Meghan is just hell-bent like a laser on still breaking into A-list circles in Hollywood. That's all she wants.
Well, it's not worked.
The deputy US press secretary has reportedly left. A long-serving UK media liaison has also moved on. Other experienced team members have quietly followed, one after another, with barely a public word said about any of it. Now, staff turnover happens everywhere. People move on, chase new opportunities, and change directions. That's normal. But observers have been quick to point out that when an organization is already fielding questions about future projects, shrinking public interest, and long-term direction, losing your most experienced communication people starts to look like more than just routine reshuffling. These aren't background roles. These are the people who know exactly how the operation runs from the inside. That's why some commentators see these exits as signals of something bigger shifting behind the scenes. Whether that's accurate remains up for debate, but the speculation is not going anywhere, and history has shown this pattern time and time again. When high-profile organizations go through turbulent periods, information has a way of leaking out eventually. Former staff talk, industry insiders connect dots, and the full picture slowly comes into focus. People are watching very closely right now. Now, here's a part of the story that critics find especially telling, even though almost nothing has been said about it publicly.
So when Harry and Meghan purchased their Montecito estate in 2020, it wasn't presented as a temporary stop. It was presented as their fresh start, their California dream, their escape from royal life. Now, their chance to build new futures on their own terms was going to be with this new home. Starting fresh, it was a go.
Harry is very aware of the fact that he has been demoted from a position where 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when Prince Harry walked into a room, everybody wanted to meet him. Now when Prince Harry walks into a room, everybody wants to avoid him.
Montecito is one of the most exclusive zip codes in America. Massive names in entertainment, tech, and business live there. It's a world where privacy is everything, connections are currency, and social circles can be brutally selective. Yet, over the past few years, reports and commentary have quietly suggested that Harry and Meghan may not be as plugged into that local celebrity world as most people assumed they would be. Claims of social distance, fewer visible associations, and limited integration into the elite circles that once seemed ready to embrace them have started making the rounds. No dramatic public statements, no flood of exposés, just a creeping silence that some critics argue speaks volumes on its own. When they first arrived in California, the narrative was electric, fresh start, powerful network, endless doors swinging open, but the reality appears far more complicated than that. Because one truth keeps surfacing throughout this entire story. You can leave behind a title, a country, or an institution, but public perception has a way of following you no matter how far you run. And that leads straight into what may be the most jaw-dropping twist yet, because according to reports from multiple sources, Meghan may no longer be fully satisfied with life in Montecito. The issue, according to those reports, comes down to one thing: location.
Their finances. Maintaining a massive estate is expensive. You've got security, you've got staff, you've got maintenance, you've got the landscaping, you've got the property taxes. The annual cost alone can be staggering. And third, lifestyle. The reality of living somewhere often turns out to be very, very different from the dream that sold you on it, right?
I think it's both a personality disorder and an illness. Nobody can be so addicted to publicity that they need on a daily basis to make an ass of themselves by announcing that they're going to go to a funeral that they know they cannot go to. She had to have known she couldn't have gone to it. I mean, did she think because she had scrubbed up an invitation from Balenciaga?
Montecito delivers privacy and luxury, but it also means constant back-and-forth travel to Los Angeles for meetings, deals, and industry connections. Sources claim Meghan would prefer to be right in the middle of the action. Areas like Bel Air and Malibu have reportedly been floated as possibilities, putting her closer to Hollywood, major business contacts, and the entertainment world she has long been tied to. But here's where the plot thickens. Even if a move is on the table, pulling it off may be far more complicated than it sounds. According to commentators who track the couple's finances closely, maintaining one large luxury estate is already a serious financial undertaking. Running two at the same time would be a completely different level of pressure. That's where the conversation starts getting messy. The Montecito estate has reportedly climbed significantly in value since it was first purchased. Some estimates place it well above the original price tag on paper. But as financial experts constantly remind people, estimated property value and actual available cash are two very different things.
Precisely, when you stop to think he got $1 million from JP Morgan, I mean, that shows to what extent they have declined. I've been told that they are in big trouble financially, hence why they had to get rid of most of their expensive staff.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I understand that things are very rocky with them at the moment. And of course, we have to have one tail left eye in sympathy.
The sprawling estate became the backdrop for everything. The backdrop for their Netflix deal, their Spotify, their interviews, you know, the magazine features, all of their business launches, their family photos. This mansion became more than a house. It became a symbol that they had successfully left the royal family behind a created new life in America.
A home can look worth a fortune while still draining millions every year just to keep the lights on. So if relocation plans are real, any move would likely depend heavily on timing, finances, and what happens with the current property first. This isn't as simple as loading up boxes and heading down the coast. And that's exactly where critics see the sharpest layer of irony in this whole story. Harry walked away from royal life, chasing independence and freedom. Montecito was sold as the ultimate symbol of a fresh start, a place where new chapters could be written far from palace walls and royal expectations. Yet some reports now paint a picture of a couple that may once again feel boxed in not by royal duties or palace rules this time, but by the same practical realities that catch up with everyone eventually, regardless of status or wealth. That contrast has people absolutely gripped. And now we arrive at the claim that has sparked the loudest conversation of all. Because everything covered so far, the financial questions, the staff exits, the speculation about future plans, the reported desire for a new location, it all circles back to one central rumor.
Her business, as ever, seems to be failing. And Harry is basically going around the country pocketing about 200, 300K per paid speech to private corporations in North America. What are you hearing, Lady C?
Well, I'm hearing, first of all, that he only got 50,000 for Canada.
Oh, that is brutal. Brutal.
And you can now get him from 30 to 50,000 for smaller things, and it goes up to a maximum of 100 for larger things. That's what I'm hearing. Clearly, you're hearing something slightly different.
Well, the numbers are inflated here in America, because I would bet your sourcing is dead on. 30K? That is a bargain basement.
For months, persistent claims have been circulating that the Montecito property may be quietly drawing interest behind the scenes. It's important to stress that none of these reports have been verified. There's been no public listing, no official announcement, and zero confirmation from Harry or Meghan themselves. But according to the rumors, if conversations are happening, they're not going through the channels most people would expect. Instead, the claims describe the kind of ultra-discreet process reserved for the most secretive high-end real estate deals. Private brokers, confidential discussions, potential buyers being carefully screened behind closed doors. The kind of arrangement specifically designed to keep the whole thing completely invisible to the outside world. Some reports even suggest strict confidentiality measures could be in place during any private viewings, though none of it has been independently confirmed. Yet it's exactly the kind of detail that keeps serious observers paying close attention. And here's why critics find this particular angle so compelling. If the property ever surfaced publicly on the market, the reaction would be instant and fierce. Was it purely a lifestyle choice?
The whole family, I understand. It's not only Charles. The whole family has been absolutely horrified by the trajectory Harry has allowed Meghan to shoot them on. Let's put it that way. Don't think that people didn't notice, because if you or I notice how the put-downs have been slivered in, because Meghan is a sneaky so-and-so. She very seldom comes outright and says something. She insinuates it normally. And when she doesn't insinuate it, she's very clipped with it.
A desire for a fresh environment, or would the world interpret it as the clearest sign yet that something far more significant was unraveling behind those carefully guarded gates? That's the weight a potential sale carries, not just financially, but symbolically. For supporters, it might simply mean a wealthy family making a practical decision. For critics, it would become the loudest piece of evidence in a years-long argument about whether the California dream was ever as solid as it looked on camera. For now, nothing has been officially confirmed. But history has shown, time and time again, that in the world of celebrity real estate, major business moves, and high-stakes personal decisions, the truth has a stubborn habit of surfacing. Walls talk, insiders whisper, and eventually, the full picture comes together whether anyone planned for it or not. Now, let's pull back and look at the bigger picture, because beneath all the property rumors, the financial speculation, and the business headlines, there is a deeply human story unfolding here that often gets lost in the noise. And it may actually be the most important part of everything.
Harry and Meghan's lifestyle comes with a big price tag. Their Montecito mansion isn't exactly cheap. $14 million was spent on the house, which boasts a pool and tennis court, as well as famous neighbours. Oprah Winfrey and Ellen DeGeneres live nearby. The couple's reportedly planning to sell up and move to Malibu, although unconfirmed, it's unclear if they need to downsize to free up some cash, or they just desire a change of scenery for their family of 4. Prince Harry takes security of his loved ones very seriously and pays for around-the-clock bodyguards, thought to cost millions of dollars a year.
But as far as she's concerned, as long as her name is in the paper, it doesn't matter.
Yes, bad attention is better than no attention. You know, I have two thoughts about the Valentino story, which really, you know, it takes a lot to shock me when it comes to Meghan Markle. And it shocked me, not only for its utter ghoulishness, not only for the reptilian nature in which she regards any gathering of celebrities.
Various unverified claims have suggested that Harry opened up at a social gathering in Los Angeles, speaking in a way that surprised those around him. According to those accounts, he wasn't performing for cameras or carefully choosing his words for a documentary crew. He was simply talking openly, honestly, and with a level of emotion that reportedly caught people off guard. The claims suggest he expressed genuine frustration about how certain aspects of this chapter of his life have developed. Not the version presented in polished interviews or streaming series, but the real, unfiltered version that exists behind the scenes. Reports have also suggested he carries a quiet longing for parts of his former life, family connections that once felt permanent. A sense of belonging tied to a place, an institution, and a history that cannot simply be recreated somewhere else. Those aren't small things to walk away from. And according to multiple sources, the weight of those decisions may have grown heavier over time rather than lighter. That detail alone reframes everything, because when Harry and Meghan first stepped back from royal duties, the narrative was built around liberation. The language used at the time was bold and decisive. They were choosing themselves. They were breaking free. They were writing a new story on their own terms. The world watched, and depending on where people stood, they either cheered or worried about what came next. But liberation is only as powerful as what replaces it.
According to insiders, the prince confessed that he wants a divorce and claims he would have never married Meghan if a specific person, and he named the person, and we're going to give you the name of the person during the video, hadn't personally vouched for her character and encouraged him to date this woman. And here's where the drama reaches another level, because witnesses claim that he told that Meghan Markle has no intention of agreeing to a divorce unless Harry meets the list of extraordinary, outrageous demand, which has created a standoff between Harry and Meghan Markle, which could drag on for years.
And 6 years is a long time to measure the gap between expectation and reality. The deals that were supposed to define their independence have faced turbulence. The social world they were expected to dominate in California has reportedly been harder to crack than anticipated. The projects designed to establish them as major creative forces have generated as many questions as they have successes. And through all of it, the one place meant to anchor everything the Montecito estate has quietly become the subject of some of the most intense speculation surrounding their entire story. Think about what that property was supposed to represent. It wasn't just a house, it was a statement. Purchasing a $14.5 million estate in one of America's most exclusive communities sent a clear message to the world that they had landed, that they were stable, and that the future they had chosen was real and sustainable. Every carefully managed public appearance connected to that location reinforced the same idea. This is working. This is the life we chose. And it is everything we said it would be. Yet, the version of that home the public has actually seen has reportedly never been the real thing. The documentaries used different locations. The lifestyle content used different backdrops. The carefully curated glimpses behind the curtain were, according to multiple reports, never actually filmed inside the property they call home. And when that detail is placed alongside everything else, the financial questions, the staff departures, the relocation rumors.
The secret sale theory is this. Now, let's talk about the rumor, what is going on. Now, according to information circulating privately, there are claims that the property may be quietly marketed behind the scenes. Again, there is no real public evidence or public listing of this, no official information, no verified real estate documents. But what I do have is I have an email that Paula M. sent to me that I found interesting. Okay, so that's what that looks like. The luxury real estate world, some of the biggest transactions never appear on public websites. Now, celebrities, they frequently use private brokers. They have these private showings, private buyer networks, a lot of confidentiality, and then they have these agreements. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, why? Why do they need to do that? Because the last thing a celebrity wants is 1,000 strangers touring their home or photographs documenting every viewing. Now, if Harry and Meghan were exploring a sale, an off-market approach would actually make perfect sense.
The reports of private real estate discussions, a very different image begins to take shape. It raises a question that is uncomfortable but impossible to ignore. How much of what the public has been watching was always a carefully constructed version of a life, rather than the life itself? That question isn't unique to Harry and Meghan. Plenty of public figures operate in exactly the same way. But it hits differently when the entire foundation of someone's public identity is built around authenticity, transparency, and the idea that they chose truth over performance. That contrast is what keeps this story alive in public conversation far beyond what ordinary celebrity gossip typically sustains. People aren't just curious about a house or a business deal. They are watching what happens when the distance between a public narrative and private reality becomes too wide to maintain quietly. And then there is the social dimension, the part of this story that rarely gets the attention it deserves. Montecito was supposed to be the gateway into Hollywood's most powerful inner circles. The assumption was that Harry and Meghan would become central figures in elite California society almost immediately. The connections seemed natural, the timing seemed right, the credentials seemed undeniable. Yet reports and commentary over the past few years have consistently suggested that the integration many people expected simply hasn't materialized in the way anyone anticipated.
Meanwhile, the couple's children are said to be caught in the middle as emotions run high and the conflict intensifies. What is worse for Harry is that he did turn to the palace, asking them for help, to help them mediate between him and Meghan Markle, because at this point in time, they can't even talk to each other without getting into arguments. And we're going to hear from Harry, and we're going to show you how Meghan Markle tricked this man.
Given that I didn't know a lot about him, everything that I've learned about him, I learned through him.
How she really catfished him.
The elite circles that appeared ready to welcome them with open arms have reportedly remained more closed off than expected. Invitations, collaborations, and the kind of deep social roots that take years to build in competitive environments like Hollywood don't appear to have developed at the pace or scale the original narrative suggested they would. That's not a minor footnote. In a world where connections drive opportunities, where relationships open doors, and where being genuinely embedded in the right social fabric determines what projects get made and what deals get done, social positioning matters enormously. And if that positioning hasn't developed the way it was supposed to, it creates a ripple effect that touches everything else. Now layer on top of that the steady stream of staff departures from Archwell. Senior communications figures don't quietly walk away from high-profile organizations without reason. These are experienced professionals who understand better than almost anyone what the internal reality of an operation looks like. When multiple people in those roles move on within a relatively short window, and when their departures are met with public silence rather than acknowledgement, it naturally feeds the perception that something significant is shifting internally. Organizations going through genuine periods of strength and momentum typically hold on to their most experienced people. They celebrate continuity.
The timing is very interesting. Yeah, so what makes this particular story fascinating is the timing. Now, at the same moment, reports continue emerging about Frogmore Cottage being renovated and repurposed in the United Kingdom. Speculation is growing about the future of the Sussex's California base. Now, it's almost symbolic. The UK home is gone, The royal role is gone, and now some are wondering whether the California dream could eventually be next.
They broadcast stability. The absence of that kind of messaging around these departures is something sharp observers have noticed, and it's a detail that refuses to be explained away easily. Put all of these threads together, and what emerges is a portrait of a crossroads moment, not a collapse, not a scandal in the traditional sense, but a genuine fork in the road where the choices made over the next period of time will likely determine the shape of everything that follows. The property situation, whatever its true status turns out to be, is almost a metaphor for the larger question hanging over the entire story. Can the brand, the business, and the personal narrative be successfully repositioned for a new chapter? Or have the foundational choices made 6 years ago created a set of circumstances that are genuinely difficult to move beyond, regardless of talent, resources, or determination? Royal commentator Maureen Callahan's observation that the couple is having serious difficulty monetizing what they once monetized so effectively cuts straight to the core of that question. The connection to royal life, the novelty, the intrigue, the sense of insider access to a world most people will never see was always the engine powering the machine. As that connection fades naturally with time and distance, replacing that engine with something equally powerful has proven to be a far more complicated challenge than the original plan appeared to account for. And Harry himself, if the unverified reports of his candid conversations are even partially accurate, may understand that reality more clearly now than at any previous point. Walking away from something as vast and historic as the British royal family is not a decision with a simple undo option. The world he came from continues to exist, continues to evolve, and continues to generate its own headlines entirely independent of him. And the distance between that world and his current reality in California appears, based on available reports, to have grown into something more complicated than either freedom or escape. For many long-time observers of this story, that's where the genuine emotion lives, not in the property speculation or the business figures, but in the human reality of a man who made a monumental, irreversible decision and is now living with the full complexity of what that actually means across years of real life rather than headlines. 6 years ago, 2 people stood at a crossroads and chose a direction that shocked the world. Supporters celebrated, critics warned, commentators predicted, and everyone, on every side, believed they knew how the story would end. Now, with the benefit of time and the weight of real-world evidence, the picture looks genuinely different from any version that was predicted back then. The California dream was supposed to be the destination. The place where everything finally made sense, where the sacrifices paid off, and where the life that had been envisioned became the life that was actually lived. Whether that dream has delivered on its promise, or whether the next chapter will require a fundamental rethinking of what success actually looks like, is the question that keeps millions of people watching, reading, and debating, because ultimately, this was never just about a house, a deal, or a headline. It was always about whether a bet placed on freedom, identity, and a completely new beginning would pay off in the way it was promised it would. And right now, that question is more open than it has ever been. If this story had you hooked from start to finish, hit that like button right now and make sure you subscribe so you never miss what drops next. Share this with someone who's been following the royal drama, because this conversation is far from over. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the California dream delivered everything they were hoping for? Do you think another major move is coming? We want to hear exactly what you think. See you in the next one.